Art Smart Shorties with Mr. Craig. Hey guys and gals, it's Mr. Craig here from the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay, representing the Youth Arts Initiative, yo-yo. And today we're going to take a couple of the lessons that we just did and combine them into something super cool. So we did a lesson where we learned how to take a square, turn it into a cube, take a circle and a rectangle, turn it into a cylinder, take a circle and turn it into a ball. Now with those three objects, and we can combine them to even include triangles and cubes and cones and pyramids and things like that. Now we're going to create something using those shapes. Now, in my particular instance, I love to create robots. So I'm going to start out with a cylinder. And this is going to become my robot's head. So there is my cylinder. And now I can add in a ball for an eye, and maybe another ball over here for an eye, and it's going to come off of the cylinder a little bit, so I'm going to leave it there. And let's add a cylinder to it for a nose that comes back to the space. Cylinder for the nose. And now I'm going to invent a shape that's going to kind of mimic the cylinder for the jawline. And we'll kind of get that in there. Here's my robot's jaw. I'm going to put a little cylinder here, a little hole, maybe with a screw slot right there so its jaw can be hinged. And then we'll add a cylinder on the side for its ears, or like a bolt in its head. It looks like Frankenstein right now. And I like Frankenstein, so that's not a problem. And this circle here looks a little smaller than that one, but I might want to emphasize that because it would be kind of interesting. It would be, I'd never seen a robot with two eyeballs that weren't the same size. So this maybe could be a little bit of a mess up. Maybe he's a little broken. And I'm going to put a little hollowed out space here at the top just to kind of finish him off, and maybe put a row of rivets around the top of his head just to kind of make him interesting. And we can kind of put a little bit of a divot on the eyeball here to give it a little shape there too as well. And this is just the head, so we'll see what we can do with that. Now, if we remember, a lot of times when we do these rough layouts, we got to remember in our head that some of these lines aren't going to be used, because if you emphasize them a little bit where things overlap, you might mess something up. And I've seen it happen, but that's okay, because that's what erasers are for, is to clean it up. Now I'm going to kind of start with my eyeball here just because it's in the center, and I'm going to use a little bit of a Hulk line and darken that edge, and the same thing for the inside, so a nice clean edge. And then I can go in here and add some shading, some dark shading where the light would be the lowest, not hitting there because it's kind of underneath there a little bit. And now's your time. We've practiced these shapes, but now's your time to actually start thinking about them as if they were objects that existed in reality. Where would the light happen? Would you, and for me, the light's coming down from the top, very similar to what we did. So we're going to get the same shapes that we did on the other shapes that we were doing, but now we can kind of control that a little bit more. And try to give it some volume so that it looks like an actual object in space. And now you can see this doesn't look like just lines anymore. Now it looks like it's actually a riveted shape on top of the head of this robot. The nose might be the next thing that sticks out, so let's go in here. And again, overlapping, we should talk about that sometime too, because when objects overlap other objects, it shows and gives us the illusion that they're closer to us than something in the distance. So if we take the very same shape and repeat it and put one further in the distance and one closer into the front, something's going to look closer to us and one in the distance, one in the background. Foreground and background. other words that we like to use in the arts for sure. And by cracky, pretty soon I'm going to be doing some Art Smart Shorties about perspective. And gang, when we get into those, that's when Mr. Craig here really developed his art skills. My mind was cracked open when I started learning about perspective. And I'm not going to talk about it right now because I don't want to save that story for when I start teaching that. But right now, this shading, this was another thing. As soon as you learn a little bit about shading and how to master some of that, you really can create some cool things just using the shapes that you know how to shade. And again, this is an old robot, so I can kind of make it a little bit sloppy. But now if you see, look at the eyes, the one eye is bigger than the other, and now it's been done on purpose. It was built that way. So again, going into the cylinders, creating the cylinder on the side, using my Hulk line, and then going back in here with my ninja lines and Hulk lines, and making them nice and heavy, and then making them gentle. Building up your tone. This is going to be a strange line as it kind of comes down and around. And let's just go with a part of it to start with and correct it as we go so that we can kind of get it a little bit more physically accurate as far as what this might look like. The edge of our circle, or not our circle, our cylinder, which is the robot's head, and get the bottom part of our jaw. And then this detail I can kind of put in later, but I can also draw it in right now so I know what I want it to look like. A little screw head showing there, getting that in a shadow. It's indented. Let me get the rest of this shape laid out so that I can demonstrate it for you. And on the top of this, we're going to get a Hulk line here to get the top of our cylinder, trying to get it all smooth and perfect in one line. And robots are cool because they're mechanical, and that means that most of their lines are going to be sharp and hard, whereas doing animals or doing trees or nature, it's very organic. So and those are good words for you to know a little bit about too. When something's organic, the lines are not mechanically sharp and hard, like a pencil, straight, perfectly straight. A T-square, perfectly straight. A human arm, not perfectly straight. Not perfectly straight at all. We are organic pieces of material, so we'll never see a straight edge on a human being. If you do, they ought to be in the Guinness Book of World Records because that is pretty weird. But to see straight edges on robots, yes, we see that all the time on mechanically built devices. Now, I'm going to look at this as one whole cylinder. So my shadow is going to be kind of way back in here. And the cool part about this is once I've established where it's going to be, it's going to continue down and across the edge a little bit maybe, and down this side too. So that's all going to be the same light source is going to hit that and kind of reflect around it. And then I'm going to go up to the edge with a little bit of darkness, up to the edge with a little bit of darkness there, up to the edge with a little bit of darkness there, and then go in here and smooth this out just a bit, a teensy tiny bit. I'm trying to avoid the rivet there so I can do that a little bit later on. And maybe get my number 3 through number 5, or actually maybe number 4 through 7 in here where it's the darkest. Flip it, rotate it so that I can do it comfortably. And this also helps you to keep the drawing from getting too messy. If you notice, your hand can really smudge your drawings quite a bit. One of the ways that I avoid that is by actually taking a piece of scratch paper and making a hand rest for myself so that my hand can rest on the piece of paper and not mess up my drawing. For example, if I wanted to shade over here, now I can go right over the top of my drawing and my hand isn't going to smudge that. It's a really good tip, gang, that don't be afraid of just finding a piece of scratch paper that might be in the garbage. You know, there's all kinds of scratch paper that you can find that'll work for that. You're basically covering your drawing to protect it from your own sloppiness. We are such sloppy kids. And I'm not blaming you kids because I'm a sloppy drawer myself. I try my best to keep it neat, but it does not always work. Sometimes I'll have to stop drawing and go and wash my hands. That is an option. And we're going in here for a little bit more shading. And now you guys can spend a lot more time than a 10-minute block that I'm going to be spending on this. You can put a whole body together for your robot, which is super cool. And I've done plenty paintings with robots in them, drawings with robots in them. It's just a fun challenge that you can change it up every single time you make one. Every time you make a robot, you can make it a little bit different, and you're never making it the same each time, unless you want to. If you want to make it the same, you can, certainly. And now with these rivets on here, you want to think about them too, because some of these are going to be in darker areas. So I'm going to go in here and just kind of create a roundness to them. Create a roundness, create a roundness. Whoops, that one maybe got a little too dark. Missed a highlight on that one, and I'm going to go in there and see if I can sap out just a little bit of light to capture that. So let's take our eraser tool and just see if I can erase just a little bit of light there. And yeah, just a tiny bit helps out a lot. And just kind of capture just a little bit of a highlight on some of those rivets. And let's go in here with the top of our head and blend that in a little bit, blend this edge a little bit more. And then if you're thinking about the direction that some of your metal is going to be, you can shade it in that direction, and it helps to create that illusion that you're creating a real object, a real space. Okay, so here is my clunky little robot, and it took me maybe 10 minutes. I can clean up my edges that weren't part of the drawing or part of my layout. And I could also go back in here and maybe finish up some edges for his shoulders. Maybe a neck piece comes in here. And maybe even add some arms. And a chest emblem. So there's a lot of things that you can add to make it your drawing and make it fun for yourself. So gang, my name is Mr. Craig, and I represent the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Green Bay, specifically the Youth Arts Initiative. And I'm super excited to create some of these videos. Hopefully you're watching them and gaining some skills. You don't have to just limit yourself to robots either. You could make stuffed animals. There could be some really cool stuffed animals that you could create using those shapes that you learned. However, stuffed animals might be a little bit more organic than mechanical. You could make vehicles, which are mechanical and have harsh lines. You could make people. But again, now when we're thinking about the shapes on a person, we might have an oval, and we know how to shade a circle, stretch it out, it's an oval, and then we add a triangle on there. It becomes a pyramid. Then we add a hole, and we shade in another hole on the opposite side, and start breaking it down into different shapes. And all of a sudden, we've got a face that you can apply that same principle of light sources to that. Give it some volume. Make some value changes. See you guys soon. Keep practicing.